Ancient Earth stories, whispers from our forgotten past.
Have you ever heard the silence of stone? Not just stillness, but silence so deep it holds the memory of creation itself?
Have you ever stood on the edge of sky where breath becomes prayer and shadow becomes story? There is a place high above the valleys where light touches first, before the birds wake, before the wind speaks. There, at the crown of the world, stands a gate.
Not a doorway, not an entrance.
Just a shape carved from one piece of stone, square and watching, as if the sun itself needed a frame to step through. The people call it Intipunku, the gate of the sun, and it is said that it waits. No one remembers who carved it. Some say the Inca shaped it with golden tools, lifted by voices in song. Others believe it was already there, waiting long before empire, long before language. And some whisper that it was never carved at all, that it was opened. This is the story of a boy who lived beneath the gaze of that gate. His name was Ilya, and he was born with sunlight in his eyes. Even as an infant, the midwife gasped. Not gold, she said, not brown like soil. His eyes are the color of dawn.
Of rays, and so they wrapped him in soft cloth and hushed their voices.
The elders made signs in the air to bless him, or perhaps to protect themselves. No one said it aloud, but everyone thought it. The child had been touched by something older than them. He grew like silence grows, steady, unnoticed, until it was everywhere. He spoke little. He smiled softly, and when he walked, the birds did not fly away. But always, always, his gaze drifted to the hills, to that place where the stone gate stood. Even as a small boy, he would leave at dawn, climbing barefoot through frost, just to sit and watch the frame where the sun would rise. His mother scolded him once, only once.
"You'll catch cold," she said.
But the boy replied, "I was listening." To what, no one knew. Years passed, and the village went on in its rhythm. Men carved terraces into mountains. Women shaped wool into warmth. Children were born.
Old ones passed.
And Ilya watched the gate. He began carving stones. Not like the other boys, who shaped toys, animals, flutes. Ilya carved squares. He would sit for hours with small chisel and stone, drawing out tiny versions of the sun gate with soft reverence, like copying the shape of prayer. No one asked him why. One morning, an old man named Yupanqui came to sit beside him. He was the village's sky reader, a keeper of calendars and shadows. "Why do you make so many gates, little one?" he asked. Ilya did not look up. "Because I keep forgetting the way." The old man frowned. "Forgetting?" "The gate never moves." But Ilya only said, "Not there. In the other place." "The place it leads." The old man did not speak again. From then on, Yupanqui began to leave small offerings near the boy's carvings, a feather, a flower, a pebble shaped like an ear. And each time, Ilya would nod. On the day of his 12th summer, Ilya did not return home. The sun rose and the village stretched.
Mothers called children.
Water was drawn. Smoke rose from cook fires. But Ilya's bed was empty, his tools untouched. They searched, of course. They climbed to the sun gate, calling his name. But there were no footprints, no blood.
No trail, only a single carving left on the stone ledge, a perfect miniature gate, open in the middle with a small spiral etched just inside the frame.
And around it, feathers.
Not placed by hand, scattered as if something had burst into flight. Condor feathers, they said. The villagers mourned in silence.
His mother wept for a full moon cycle, then wrapped his stone tools in cloth and buried them near the gate. Yupanqui stopped reading the stars, and yet, each year on the longest day, when the sun climbs its highest, someone would notice a shimmer at the gate, just a breath of gold.
A flicker of light.
And the sound, faint like distant flutes. Some say it's just the wind. Others say Ilya still waits, half within and half beyond. It is said that time moves differently near the gate, that the stone remembers those who remember it, that once, just once, a shepherd passing by looked into the empty frame at dawn and saw not the sun, but a boy standing in a field of light, carving something with his hands. Was it Ilya?
Was it memory?
Or was it the gate itself, dreaming of the one who loved it most? And so the gate of the sun still stands.
Not ruined.
Not broken, just waiting. As if listening for someone to call it home again. The Andes remembers. Stone does not forget. Have you ever seen a bird that does not fly but floats, as if the very breath of the world holds it aloft? Have you heard wings that do not beat, but drift in silence across the skin of mountains? They say the condor does not belong to earth or sky. It belongs to the space between, and in that hush it sees what none of us were meant to see. This is the tale of a girl named Inca. She lived in a high village cradled between cliffs where clouds rolled like wool and the air smelled of thunder. She was a healer's daughter, born in the month when stars fall like tears. Inca was known not for beauty or laughter, but for quiet. She listened with her whole body. When her mother spoke, Inca heard the root beneath the word. When others fell ill, she could place her palm on their skin and hum just low enough to send sleep into their bones. But one day, her sister, little Chaska, did not wake. She had gone to gather herbs near the cliffs and never returned. The village searched. They called into the canyons, climbed the ledges, tied ropes around waists, and lowered brave boys into shadowed crevices. But no trace came back.
Only one boy returned with shaking hands and said, "I saw a feather."
Black and white. Like a condor's, it drifted up from the gap. From that day, Inca did not speak.
Not for a week.
Not for a month. She kept her hair unbraided and her face to the sky. Her mother tried to console her. "Aska is with the mountain now," she said. But Inca whispered one sentence and only once. "She is not gone. She is held." That night Inca had a dream. She stood atop the highest cliff, barefoot on the ledge, and the moon hung low. Not above her, but before her, huge and silver and weeping light. Then came the condor. It did not flap. It glided from behind the moon, as if born of sorrow. Its wings were so wide they blocked the stars. Its eyes were not eyes. They were mirrors. It hovered before her, then spoke, not in words, but in rhythm, like a memory long forgotten. Inca awoke with tears on her neck, and when the moon came full again, she climbed the path in silence as her sister once had, to the place where Chaska disappeared. She carried nothing but a bundle of dried flower petals in her sleeve and a silver pin in her braid. The wind did not resist her. The stones beneath her feet did not shift, and when she reached the edge, where the world fell away, she did not cry. Instead, she sat. She waited. Hours passed. The moon rose.
Mist curled around her shoulders like a shawl. Then, as if summoned by breath itself, the condor came. It did not circle.
It did not cry. It landed. Its talons gripped the ledge beside her. Its feathers shimmered like the ink of midnight soaked in starlight.
Inca did not flinch.
She reached into her sleeve and scattered the petals to the wind. The condor turned its great head, and in its eyes, not mirrors now, but depth, she saw her sister, not her face,
not her body,
but the shape of her voice rising like bubbles through water. Then the condor lifted its wing and stretched it toward her, and Inca did what no human had done in memory. She stepped beneath that wing. No one knows how long she remained. Some say a moment. Others say 3 days passed, and the village believed her gone too. But at dawn on the third morning, she returned. She walked down the path slowly, her braid full of moonlight, her feet bare and red. She spoke no words. That night she sat beside her mother and began to hum, a song none had heard before. It made the fire hush. It made the old men weep. The next morning, Anka told her story. Not all of it, but just enough. She said the condor lives in the place between sorrow and silence. She said it carries messages for the moon. She said her sister was not dead. She had become light. And then she said something none could forget. She told me to let her go. But first, to give you this. Anka reached into her braid and removed the silver pin. It had belonged to Chaska. The villagers whispered and wept, but none asked what else she had seen. In the seasons that followed, Anka grew into her mother's place. She healed with touch, with gaze, with songs she never learned but somehow knew. And once each year, when the moon hung low, she would climb again to the cliffs and wait.
Not to be taken.
Just to listen. They say condors live 100 years.
But no one has ever found one that died. And no one has ever touched one.
Save Anka. Now and then, travellers from far valleys pass through and ask, why do the condors gather here, above this small place? And the elders smile, they say, because one of ours kept a secret for the moon. Because love lingers. Because the wind remembers. And at night, when the sky is clean and the cliffs shine with mist, you may hear it, the hush of feathers over stone. And if your heart is quiet, you might hear Chaska's laugh carried on the wing of the great watcher. Not lost, just light. Have you ever stood before a mirror that did not reflect your face but your fate? Have you heard your name whispered in the wind, or not with love, but with warning? They say that names have weight, and the heavier the name, the deeper the silence that follows it. This is the story of a queen whose name was erased.
Not by war, not by death.
But by something older, deeper, a sorrow that curled around time itself. She was born in the sacred city of stone, where the clouds bow low and the sun lingers longest, a daughter of the royal bloodline, wrapped in gold at birth and bathed in the sacred waters of the Wilka Mayu. The priests called her Inti Remik, child of the sun's breath, but the people simply called her Ilari, the light before morning. She was beautiful, yes, but not the soft beauty of flowers or song. She was sharp, shaped like wind cutting through valley passes. Her eyes held fire, her steps echoed like prophecy. Even as a child, when she walked the terraces, the birds stilled their wings and the llamas bowed their heads. She studied the rites. She sang the sacred tones. She lit the ceremonial fires with a hand that did not shake. But in the shadows, she studied other things, star maps, fragments of old songs scratched into hidden corners, and the tongue of the old ones, the language before empire. When she turned 17, she was betrothed, not to a man, but to a future, a priesthood.
A binding.
She would become not just queen, but bridge, the living thread between gods and the world. But Ilari had dreams that did not follow the pattern. In those dreams she was not crowned. She was not worshipped. She was walking barefoot into the jungle, chasing something she could not name. Then came the stargazer. He arrived at dusk with sandals worn to threads and a voice like carved wood.
His name was Amaru, not royal.
Not priestly. A keeper of sky law descended from the line that watched stars before temples were stone. He asked no favors. He offered no gifts. But when he spoke of the constellations, the air itself seemed to lean in. Ilari listened. And the more she listened, the more the weight of her name began to ache. He told her of a star that flickered where none should, of a pattern in the heavens that changed once every 1,000 years. He told her, quietly, like a secret not yet ripe, that perhaps destiny was not carved in gold, but in choice. That night, Ilari walked through the temple garden and placed her hand upon the sacred mirror, the obsidian slab that only the chosen were allowed to touch. In it, she did not see her face, she saw road.
And at its end, her crown, lying in the dust. They met again and again, in silence, in shadow.
They spoke not of love, but of light and time and the meaning of freedom. But the walls have ears, and the wind is not always kind. The high oracle came to her chamber on the night before her binding. He said no words. He simply placed a folded cloth on the floor.
Inside it, a feather, a stone, a lock of her hair, cut while she slept.
And one final thing, the silver mirror cracked through the center. She was not asked. She was not accused, but she was seen. The next morning, she was gone. No footprints, no cries. Just a chamber, still warm with breath, and a half-burned scroll that bore her seal. The empire searched for moons.
Scouts, priests, diviners.
The rivers were stirred. The mountains questioned. But no trace came. Then came the famine. Then the fire at the temple of the sun. Then the rains, too heavy for the crops to hold. The people whispered she had cursed them. The high oracle declared her name would be removed from the records, erased from the songs. Unspoken in every ritual, she would become Kispinyan, the forgotten. And thus they believed the curse would lift, but curses do not listen to commands. Years passed, then centuries. Her story faded from the mouths of mothers, from the ink of scribes, but not from the stones. High in a ravine where the jungle presses against the last breath of mountain, there is a cave. Inside it, a pool of black water still as sleep, and beside it, carvings, not Inca, not Quechua, older. They show a woman with her back turned, a serpent coiled around her feet,
And above her head, a star broken in two. They say that cave cannot be found twice.
Only those who are already lost will stumble into it.
And those who do,
Speak of whispers.
a voice in the water.
A question, always the same. What do you seek? Your truth or your name? Those who answer wrongly forget who they are. Those who answer rightly never speak of what they saw. But it is said, quietly, when the fire is low, that the queen still walks.
Not aged, not ghostly.
Alive in the way lightning is alive. She is the silence before a landslide, the breath between dreams. And those who feel they are watched in the jungle mist are not wrong. The curse, perhaps, was never hers. Perhaps the curse was the forgetting, the fear of a woman who chose herself over ceremony. They say her name is still known, but only by the wind. And once an old traveller came to the city of stone and stood before the sacred mirror. He placed a feather beside it,
A lock of hair.
and the cracked silver shard. Then he whispered a name that made the stones shiver, and the mirror did not show his face. It showed a woman, smiling. Then it went dark. Who was she, truly? A queen? A curse?
A star reborn in a woman's skin.
The Andes does not tell, but the wind still carries a name with no sound. And in the moments before dawn, if you listen with your eyes closed, you may hear her footsteps in the fog, not coming, but returning. Have you ever walked through a forest so quiet it feels like breath held in prayer? Have you touched stone that feels warmer than sunlight, yet lies hidden beneath moss and shadow? There are temples the world remembers, raised to the sky, carved with pride, guarded by gold. But some temples grow tired of being seen. Some drift slowly into the embrace of green, letting time fold over them like a leaf folds over dew. This is the story of such a temple and of the map maker who found it. He had no name that anyone knew, not because he lacked one, but because he'd left it behind. Some say he had once been a royal cartographer, measuring borders for a king who no longer breathed. Others say he was born in exile, never meant to belong to anything except the roads between places. He came to the cloud forest alone.
Not seeking, not running.
Just walking. His pack was small.
His feet were scarred.
And in his pocket, always, a folded map, so faded the ink had turned to memory. It did not point to treasure.
Only to silence. He slept beneath trees that hummed in the wind.
He drank from streams that whispered to him in syllables he could not translate. And all the while something pulled, not forward, not toward, but inward. On the 7th day of his wandering, the clouds thickened. Rain fell but did not strike him.
Instead, it veiled him, gently, like fingers pressed to lips. That night, the moon rose swollen and yellow, caught behind vines.
He dreamed of hands, not his, pressing into soil, lifting something ancient and wet from beneath roots. When he woke, he walked without thinking.
And soon he saw it, not a ruin.
Not a shrine, a temple, but it was shy, half swallowed by green. Moss covered its steps. Bark grew through its windows.
Vines curled like sleeping snakes along its roofless walls. He stood at its edge and felt something strange. Not awe, but welcome.
As if the temple had been waiting, not for a priest or pilgrim, but for someone who would not ask anything of it. He stepped inside. No carvings shouted.
No gold gleamed.
Only shapes. Circles, spirals, soft notches in stone where wind had once laid fingers. In the center, a basin, empty. But when he leaned over it, he did not see his reflection. He saw sky, and not the sky above, but one filled with stars that pulsed like breath. He blinked. The basin was dry, but the image lingered behind his eyes. He sat, cross-legged still. His map lay beside him, limp as leaf. And then something moved. Not sound.
Not shadow. A feeling.
Like the space around him had grown aware. He felt warmth rise from the floor. Not heat, warmth. The kind that wraps a child before memory begins. He closed his eyes. He saw a people, barefoot and laughing, weaving vines into arches. He saw water being poured. Not to cleanse, but to remember. He saw a child being held up to the canopy, as if being introduced to the wind. He opened his eyes. The temple was the same, but something in him was not. He reached into his pack and pulled out his map. With trembling hands, he folded it into a square. Then he laid it in the basin. A breeze entered the temple, though no door stood open. It lifted the map, turned it once, and let it fall. He stood and left. When he returned to the villages below, they asked him where he'd gone. He did not answer. He took no students. He drew no maps, but he began to walk again, not in search, but in remembrance. Sometimes he would pause beneath trees and place his hand on the soil. Sometimes he would hum soft melodies no one had taught him. And when asked if he ever found what he was looking for, he would say, "There is a temple that does not wish to be found. It remembers us."
Even if we forget it. And when the vines are kind, it breathes. No one believed him.
But once, a young girl, no more than 10, followed him into the forest. She returned 3 days later. She said nothing, but she carried a stone shaped like a spiral, and the smell of green clung to her hair. She never lost her way in the woods again. And so the temple sinks, each year a little deeper, not buried, not lost, just quieter. They say its basin still shows stars. They say its stone still warm to gentle feet. And they say that once a century it sings, not aloud, but into the dreams of those who listen. Not all temples rise. Some choose to fall into the arms of the forest, not in defeat, but in devotion. Have you ever gazed into water so still it holds the sky in perfect silence? Have you wondered what secrets dwell beneath that glass, where stars rest like stones and shadows speak without sound? Lake Titicaca, mother of waters, mirror of the heavens, is a place where earth and sky meet and mingle, where breath is held and time seems to fold upon itself. They say it is older than the mountains that cradle it, older than the empires that rose and fell on its shores. And they say it holds stories not spoken in daylight. This is the tale of a fisherman's wife named Yara. For many seasons, she and her husband had lived by the lake, drawing fish and dreams from its depths. But the earth was restless, and the fish grew scarce. Yara's heart ached with a sorrow she could not name. One night, when the moon hung low and heavy like a ripe fruit ready to fall, Yara walked to the lake's edge alone. The water shimmered with silver, and the stars above twinkled as if listening. She knelt and whispered prayers to the water, prayers for life, for hope, for a child to fill the empty silence in her home. And then, as if the lake had answered, the water stirred. Ripples moved outward in slow circles, and from the depths rose a child, not carried by arms, but born from water and starlight. The child's eyes were the color of dusk, soft and shimmering. Her hair flowed like dark waves, crowned with reeds and tiny blossoms. She was quiet, but her presence filled the air with calm. Yara named her daughter Amaru, the serpent of the sky, a gift from the ancient ones. As Amaru grew, she never cast a shadow. She never cried. She never fell ill. Instead, she moved like the breeze, silent and sure. Her laughter was like the ripple of water over stone. Her voice could hush the storm, the villagers whispered. Some feared, some revered. But Yara held her close, knowing her child was different. One day, when Amaru was no more than 7, the lake began to change. The water grew stiller, colder. The fish stopped biting. The reeds bent low and whispered warnings. The sky darkened earlier each evening, and the stars no longer twinkled as before. Yara knew something was coming, something ancient, something that did not want to be forgotten. Then, on the night of a rare blue moon, Amaru walked to the lake's edge. Her feet kissed the water's surface as if greeting an old friend. She did not hesitate. She stepped in. The water accepted her like a mother embraces a child. The villagers watched in silence. Some wept, some prayed. But Amaru did not return. Only her song remained. A melody soft and clear, like the echo of waves on distant shores. It drifted on the wind, touching reeds and rocks, carrying hope and sorrow in equal measure. Years passed, and the lake healed. Fish returned. The reeds stood tall once more. The stars twinkled again. And sometimes, when the sky is clear and the water calm, the villagers say they hear the song of the star child. Not a voice, but a presence. A promise? Was she a gift? A message? Or a memory of a time when earth and sky spoke as one? No one knows for sure. But the lake keeps a story, and the stars remember, and so beneath the mirrored sky, life continues. Quietly, gently, as if held by a secret older than breath. Have you ever walked a path so old that the stones beneath your feet remember your name? Have you felt the wind carry a breath not your own? A whisper from a time before memory began.
This is the story of a man who walked,
not seeking gold nor glory nor answers, but following a shadow, the shadow of time itself. He was called Corey. No one knew his origins. Some said he was born beneath a falling star, others that he was the child of the earth and sky meeting in secret. He wore no crown. He carried no staff, only a worn cloak and a heart full of quiet questions. Each year, Corey began a journey from the low valleys where the river hums softly beneath reeds to the high peaks where stone meets the sky. He walked barefoot, tracing the footsteps of those who came before, priests, warriors, dreamers. No one walked with him. No one spoke his name. He passed by the sun gate where dawn breaks like a promise. He paused, but did not enter. He watched the light spill over terraces and valleys, then moved on. He came to the cliffs where the condors circle, and he lifted his gaze to the great wings that carried silence itself. He whispered to the wind, and the wind answered in feathers. He touched the roots of the hidden temple, where vines sing soft songs to stone. He knelt beside the basin of stars, and his reflection joined the sky's breath. Year after year, he followed this circle, mountain to valley, valley to mountain, as if chasing a secret the earth had promised to share. He never stayed long.
He never rested in one place. Some who glimpsed him thought he was a ghost.
Others believed he was a spirit sent to remind the living. Once, a child saw him near a stream, sitting silent, tracing patterns in the dirt with a finger. "Who are you?" the child asked. Corey smiled, but did not answer. Instead, he pressed a smooth stone into the child's palm. It was dark as night and cold as forgotten dreams. "Remember," he said.
Voice soft as breath. Sometimes the path is not forward, but within. The child never forgot. One year,
As the sun slipped behind the mountain's edge and the stars began to kindle their light, Corey did not return. The villagers searched. They called his name into the silence, but only his footprints remained, leading to a high ridge bathed in silver moonlight. There, on the stone, lay a single gift, a spiral carved from obsidian, shining like a dark star. No one ever saw Corey again, but the wind carries his story. They say he became part of the mountains,
a shadow in the mist.
the breath between the stones, and when the night is still, some say you can hear the rhythm of his steps in the valleys, a slow, steady song, the heartbeat of the earth itself. They say he walks not to find the end of the path, but to remind us that the journey is the story, and that some secrets are carried only in silence. The Andes remembers.